name's Jim, and despite the fact that I'm losing my voice, it's my job to get the first half of this meeting going. Judith will be doing the second half. This is the beginning of 10 days of celebration and commemoration of what the diggers began here 350 years ago. And although these events are spread over 10 days, today is the actual 350th anniversary of the diggers beginning their work just over there on St George's Hill. So a real welcome to a huge variety of people here today: agitators, squatters, builders, cultivators, and everybody who's not too cynical to believe that we can't make this planet a better place to be and a place with more justice and fairer shares for all. There's going to be quite a few announcements later, but you might have noticed that in the museum just next door, just outside there, there is an exhibition about St George's Hill and about the diggers. And it includes showings on video of the Winstanley film and lots of other interesting material. So you would think, wouldn't you, that it would be open today on the anniversary day and the day when we've come here and when people have come from various parts of the world to be here today. But it isn't. It's closed. Now, we were expecting it to be open today, but Elmbridge Council decided that to have the exhibition open today would be too political. So the museum is shut. So before I introduce the first speaker, I've got a message here for Elmbridge Council. It's from some geezer called Gerrard Winstanley. And it says, "We're made to hold forth this declaration to you that are the great council of the borough of Elmbridge, that you may know what we would have and what you are bound to give us by your covenants and promises, and that you may join with us in this work and so find peace. Or else, if you do oppose us, we have peace in our work, and you shall be left without excuse."
Carried unanimously.
Our first speaker is Andrew Bradstock, who's been involved in organising a lot of the events that are going to be happening over the next few days, especially the conference, which is next weekend, that we'll mention more later. Andrew is a lecturer in theology at King Alfred's College, Winchester, and whether that makes him one of the bitter professors that Gerrard Winstanley complained about, I don't know, but you'll be able to judge for yourselves. I think not. Andrew, we're going to be talking about lots of aspects of taking the land and using the land for the benefit of everybody all over the world tonight, but it's good to begin with remembering what the diggers did here 350 years ago, and that's what Andrew's going to speak about. Andrew.
Before I do that, can I just add a rider to what Jim's just said about the council? When I discovered this afternoon that the museum wasn't going to be open, I found out who the member of the council administration was who was responsible for this decision, and phoned him up from a public call box just along there in the High Street. He had no reasons for closing it other than that well, what he didn't tell me was he'd read The Guardian and panicked, because he thought that on the basis of last week's article that we were all going to storm and break and enter St George's Hill, and he didn't think it was a good idea for the museum to be identified with such an action. And when I suggested to him that perhaps he might have phoned us up and discovered whether that was our intention and what we were actually about, he had nothing to say. If you would like to discuss it with him further, and I do, please do that. I mean, that's a private eye expression, and I hope you take the sense of it. His name is Mike Vernon, V-E-R-N-O-N. I'll give it to you at the break if you miss this. Mike Vernon, who is, believe it or not, the marketing officer. I think he could go on a course, actually, to start with. Marketing officer, Elmbridge Borough Council, Civic Centre, High Street, Esher, which is E-S-H-E-R. So it's Mike Vernon, marketing officer, Elmbridge Borough Council, Civic Centre, High Street, Esher, Surrey, KT10 9SD.
Oh, fuck it, direct action, isn't it?
Well, I'll give you a phone number as well. 01372 474474. 01372 474474. That's a general switchboard. Just ask for Mr. Vernon, and perhaps we can make his day a bit more interesting when he gets back to work after Easter. But it's an appalling decision, and I think we ought to let him know what we think about it. And apology, I mean, it's not really us to apologise, but apologies if you have come expecting to see the exhibition. Now, as Jim said, the purpose of this evening is not really to pick over the bones of the diggers, or to look back, or to have some kind of historical focus, but to look at the way in which their ideas continue to live on and continue to inspire us. But it was thought, as Jim has said, that we should just spend a brief few minutes thinking about the anniversary and why we're here. And so I was just asked to say a few words of kind of background about the diggers. I'm sure most of you know what I'm going to say anyway, but we'll just say it as a statement about why we're here and what we're celebrating. Now, of course, the idea that we should be celebrating the diggers would appear to a lot of people probably faintly absurd, because for those who think they know something about history, the diggers are among history's losers. They're the ones who kind of, tried to change the world and failed. They kind of come onto the stage for a bit, have their ideas, and don't succeed. And certainly if you read the mainstream histories of the 17th century, you would learn very little about the diggers. Either the historians assume that nothing of any significance happened in the 17th century other than what occurred to people like Oliver Cromwell or King Charles I or the Duke of Buckingham or Archbishop Laud or such noble figures as that. Or else if they do mention people like the diggers, it's largely to kind of sneer at them and ridicule them and kind of see them as a sort of sadly misguided group who, stray onto the stage, have their dreams, have a few loony ideas and then kind of disappear, and are quite lucky really if they're worth a footnote in a history of the 17th century. The sort of thing you get, and I can't ever resist reading this from Mark Kishlansky, who's one of the leading American historians of the 17th century, and actually wrote the Penguin history of the 17th century in the series of British history. And I mean, this is fairly recent. I mean, it's all the more absurd for being recent. But Kishlansky, reduces the diggers to 2 paragraphs in a book of 380 pages about the 17th century. And he simply says, the diggers were the unlikely creation of Gerrard Winstanley, a small businessman who began his career wholesaling cloth, ended it wholesaling grain, and in between sandwiched a midlife crisis of epic proportions. I don't think we really need that, but that's a kind of, mainstream assessment of one of the most original and creative thinkers that this country has been privileged to have. Now, we're here because we take a different view, I take it, of history. We don't think that history is just about the actions of kings who were largely just interested in themselves anyway. But we're here because we think history is actually about the lives of ordinary people like ourselves. It's about the struggles of ordinary people, about the dreams of ordinary people and the ideas that they have and we have of a better world. And I think we're here, are we not, to celebrate being part of that tradition which goes back through the diggers, through the radicals in the Reformation period, back to John Ball and the Peasants' Revolt, and even beyond that. Part of that tradition of ordinary people who've not necessarily gone along with the received wisdom of their day, as it was kind of laid down by the establishment, but have dared to dream their own dreams of a better world, of a just world, of a fair world. And moreover, not just dreamed these ideas, but actually acted upon them, and often at great personal cost through persecution and suffering. And so we're here to celebrate these people who, if we're going to use categories of winners and losers, are really the victors in history because of the moral superiority of their ideas, the moral superiority of their actions. And even if you want to take, the kind of normal criterion for success for winners and losers, I mean, how many of those kings and dukes and noblemen and women of the 17th century actually have their ideas, if they had any ideas, discussed 350 years later. It's not really their ideas that are moving people today. It's the diggers, it's the levellers, people like John Bunyan. It's people who were despised, imprisoned, sometimes martyred in their own day, and yet their ideas live on and inspire future generations. They're the real winners in history. So having said that, what exactly were the ideas of the diggers? What were the ideas that we celebrate and remember today and these next 2 weekends in particular? Well, I can only give you my version. There are lots of other interpretations of Winstanley and the diggers. I can only give you mine. But if I was to reduce Winstanley's philosophy to 2 words, it would simply be common ownership. Common ownership. Or to 1 word, if we can rescue a word that's been rather badly abused over the last 80 years, communism with a small c. Perhaps that's what frightens the people at Elmbridge Council, I don't know. But I mean, Winstanley's dream, the diggers' dream, was of a society that was property-less, money-less, where the concept of ownership had gone. Winstanley's belief was that the world, the land, was originally created for all to share, and that's how it should be. We ought to read what he actually says himself in the first paragraph of the True Levellers Standard Advanced, which was the manifesto of the diggers on St George's Hill, or George Hill as they preferred to call it. Begins, in the beginning of time, the great creator reason made the earth to be a common treasury, to preserve beasts, birds, fishes and man. But not 1 word was spoken in the beginning that one branch of mankind should rule over another. There you have in a nutshell Winstanley's beliefs. He calls God reason. God is not a remote figure who behaves in some arbitrary way and casts people into hell and punishes them, but God is more of a spirit who indwells us. And he calls God reason because the way in which the world was created for people to share, to live in community, was the most rational way for people to live. It's the only rational way in which we can organise ourselves in order to survive and enjoy the benefits of the creation. So God is reason indwelling people. And right back at the beginning, that's how it was. We shared everything together, and no one was privileged or given some kind of right at creation to lord it over anyone else or to exploit anyone else or get them to work for them. But Winstanley goes on to develop the idea that soon the army, which I think encapsulates Winstanley's view, and then I'll sit down and we'll hear about how his ideas have influenced us today. True religion and undefiled is this, to make restitution of the earth, which hath been taken and held from the common people by the power of conquest formerly, and so set the oppressed free. Do not all strive to enjoy the land? The gentry strive for land, the clergy strive for land, the common people strive for land. And buying and selling is an art whereby people endeavour to cheat one another of the land. Now if any can prove from the law of righteousness that the land was made peculiar to him, and his successively, shutting others out, he shall enjoy it freely for my part. But I affirm, it was made for all, and true religion is to let everyone enjoy it. Therefore, you rulers of England, make restitution of the lands which the kingly power holds from us. Set the oppressed free, and come in and honour Christ, who is the restoring power, and you shall find rest.
Bottom it says anon. I've even seen it say anon, 17th century. Well, it's not 17th century, it's 20th century. And it's not anon. It was written by Leon Rosselson, and he's here now. He's going to sing us some other songs, but I dare say we'll get round to the world turned upside down before the evening's over. Leon Rosselson.
Yes, thanks. I got interested in the diggers in the 70s actually, but I came across a completely out-of-date Left Book Club pamphlet called, I forgot what it was called, but it was by somebody called Pietigorsky, and it was all about the diggers, and I had never heard of them before. Not in my history lessons did I get any inkling that this group existed. And I became fascinated by the writings of Winstanley, and then read Christopher Hill's book, obviously, and whatever I could get hold of Winstanley. But I have never been to St George's Hill or Weybridge, so this I feel really quite excited. Actually near the site of the community, of that commune, and yeah, Weybridge. My short acquaintance of it seems to be not unlike an upmarket, wealthier version of the place I live, which is Wembley. Oh, okay. You've never heard of Wembley, which is a leafy sort of suburb northwest of London, where we Wembley suburbanites sort of protect our roads from the hordes of rock fans and football hooligans who invade us. We've got policemen who go up the end of the road, so you can't park outside our houses, so there. And meanwhile, we do our sort of Wembley suburbanite things, like we clip our hedges and we mow our lawns and we prune our roses and we look after the goldfish in our goldfish ponds, because we all have goldfish ponds, obviously, and feed and look after our well-behaved cats. We all have cats. I bet you wish you lived in Wembley, don't you? So you might think we'd have no problems, but you would be wrong. Those new neighbours, they never mow the lawn. They're throwing things and rowing from dawn to bloody dawn. Their drains are overflowing, their garden smells of pea, and dandelions are growing where the roses ought to be. They've got 5 cheeky children, and even worse than that, the terror of the neighbourhood, a devil of a cat. The neighbour's cat is not at all the sort of cat that is contented on a mat. Is not a cat like that. He isn't furry, fine or fat. You wouldn't want a pet or pat. Scraggy, ragged, outside rat. The dustbin is his habitat, the neighbour's cat. During the chorus, our pussycats are neutered. They're decent and they're clean, and they keep respectful silence when they hear God Save the Queen. This one's still uncivilised, a spitting infidel, with his nasty caterwauling and his nightly moggy smell, assaulting our azaleas, urinating on our nose, demolishing our dahlias. We're not safe in our alone. The neighbour's cat is not at all the sort of cat that is contented on a mat. Is not a cat like that. He isn't furry, fine or fat. You wouldn't want a pet or pat. Scraggy, ragged, outside rat. The dustbin is his habitat, the neighbour's cat. He'll claw at our car bonnets. He'll savage dogs and crows. He spreads chaos and subversion everywhere he goes. And this really makes my blood boil. He's fanatically fond of harpooning the goldfish in our ornamental pond. We never catch him at it, cause he's underhand and sly. But we know who to blame when our prize sparrows droop and die. The neighbour's cat is not at all the sort of cat that is contented on a mat. Is not a cat like that. He isn't furry, fine or fat. You wouldn't want a pet or pat. Scraggy, ragged, outside rat. The dustbin is his habitat, the neighbour's cat. Now he's corrupting all our darlings and leading them astray, brainwashing them to act in a most unnatural way. Does he get them high on catnip because they wear a hippie grin as they leap in front of lorries in a suicidal spin? It's a shocking situation. Every morning we emerge to find another flattened pussy laid out on the verge. The neighbour's cat is not at all the sort of cat that is contented on a mat. Is not a cat like that. He isn't furry, fine or fat. You wouldn't want a pet or pat. Scraggy, ragged, outside rat. The dustbin is his habitat, the neighbour's cat. Have you heard the latest? Things can't go on this way. The rumour is the neighbour's cat has joined the IRA. Our house prices are falling. It's time we made a stand. We've got up a petition. This wild cat must be banned. Yes, burn him for a traitor, this embodiment of sin, this ruthless agitator, he's the enemy within. The neighbour's cat is not at all the sort of cat that is contented on a mat. Is not a cat like that. He isn't furry, fine or fat. You wouldn't want a pet or pat. Scraggy, ragged, outside rat. The dustbin is his habitat, the neighbour's cat. heart was cold as midnight, my mind was worry-worn, as I wandered through the city where William Blake was born. Past hollow-shaped doorways and towers made of glass, then an old man came towards me, and he would not let me pass. The years had withered in his face, was he drunk or in despair? He led me to a silent street, said, you see that waste ground there? They never should have knocked it down, if only we'd known how. We could have stopped them doing it. I said, it's too late now. And he said, Harry could have done it, because he could put right every wrong. He could turn sighs into silence, he could turn silence into song. He could turn frowns into laughter, he could turn lost into found. He could turn wine into water, or was it the other way around? Yes, Harry could have done it, and Harry was my pal. But Harry's gone fishing in the Paradise Canal. Did you see that pile of rubble with the barbed wire all around? That used to be our local, now it's a battleground. He said, I've lived my life here in this godforsaken street. That pub was our one bit of hope, that's where we used to meet. Now they want to build an office block, put a car park there as well. A tarty supermarket, I hope they rot in hell. They say we'll improve the place, well, it won't do much for me. What I need is a bit of beach, the salt wind from the sea. And he said, Harry could have done it, 'cause he'd have made it turn out right. He could turn the lonely into fighters and the mighty into flight. He could turn saints into sinners, he could turn ashes into sparks, and he could turn the tables on the bankers and the sharks. Yes, Harry could have done it, and Harry was my pal. But Harry's gone fishing in the Paradise Canal. They say it will improve the place, but nobody asked me. What I want is a bit of beach and the sunlight on the sea. A lovely stretch of sand where me and all my mates can meet, and gentle waves to paddle in and wash our tired feet. Then we'll stretch out on our deck chairs, let the sunshine soothe our pain, and we'll make the high and mighty service winkles and champagne. It isn't very much to ask, I'll be a long time dead. Do you think you could arrange that? I laughed and shook my head. And he said, Harry could have done it, 'cause he was always on our side. He could turn John and Janet into Bonnie and Clyde. He could turn Charlotte into Why Not. He could turn Is into Seams. He could turn armies into forests and darkness into dreams. And it would turn your blood to fire when it was Harry's turn to speak. But one thing he would never do is turn the other cheek. So I left him in that silent street, an old man lost in space, his wild-eyed delusions dancing on his wizened face. And I walked on through that city with its temples made of brass. Then a great crowd swept towards me, and they would not let me pass. The hungry and the homeless, downtrodden and distressed, a wretched, ragged rabble of the outcasts and oppressed, the unwashed and the unwanted, on whom the sun has never shone. And the banners they were waving said, Harry lives on. And they sang, Harry's gone fishing, but he'll turn up by and by, when a salmon sun rises in a bright morning sky. Then he'll turn Charlotte into Why Not. He'll turn Is into Seams. He'll turn armies into forests and darkness into dreams. And he'll turn saints into sinners. He'll turn ashes into sparks. And he will turn the tables on the bankers and the sharks. He'll turn frowns into laughter and lost into found. He'll turn wine into water, or else the other way around. And the rich shall wear the saddle, and the poor shall wear the crown, when Harry rises up and turns the world upside down. Yes, Harry could have done it, Harry was my pal, but Harry's gone fishing in the Paradise Canal. One more, but I think I'm coming back at the end of these to sing the poem turned upside down. I thought it would be a shame to ignore the other group, radical people who were flourishing for that short time, called the Renters. And they did, in fact, erupt into the digger community, I believe, and were quite disruptive because they were kind of like the 17th century hippies, I guess, the anarchist left as opposed to the straight left, and I think they wouldn't kind of conform to any kind of orders or rules. It just didn't help the community, but I think they have something to say nevertheless. I think the film Winstanley, if you've ever seen it, features Ebenezer Cobb, who was the kind of a lunatic and a renter, and he played by Sid Rawl. But rather as a clown, which I think was a bit of a shame, because I think he wasn't. He also features in the play by Carol Churchill, Light Shining in Buckinghamshire, as Cobb. And I think the Ranters, their main idea was to abolish sin, which seemed like a good idea, so they could enjoy themselves. But I'm not quite sure how you enjoy yourselves if you don't feel guilty about it. Anyway, what he said was, sin and transgression is finished. Be no longer so horridly, hellishly, impudently, arrogantly wicked as to judge what is sin and what not. And they, like the diggers, also believed in everything being in common. If I have bread, he writes, this is a book called A Fiery Flying Roll, which is still available. I think it's been republished, I think it's up there. Extraordinary writing, absolutely extraordinary. If I have bread, it shall or should be his, else my religion is in vain. I am for dealing bread to the hungry, for clothing the naked, for the breaking of every yoke, for the letting of the oppressed go free. And this song is my tribute, the true story of Ebenezer Cobb. Ebenezer Cobb did away with sin. My body is my church, he said, God's dwelling is within. All I do is holy, Ebenezer cried, gave his loving freely, a ranter till he died. So drink a loving cup to Ebenezer, Ebenezer, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Ebenezer Cobb, Ebenezer Cobb. That's the chorus, would be nice if we could join it. A pox upon the pious, and on what the scriptures teach. I'd sooner hear a tinker curse than hear a vicar preach. Shameless in his pleasures, drank and smoked and swore. Beggar, thief and whore. So drink a loving cup to Ebenezer, Ebenezer, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Ebenezer Cobb, Ebenezer Cobb. The righteous said the devil will take Cobb and his kind. The devil is God's backside, said Cobb, and hell's a state of mind. For women are the only heaven, marriage is the only hell. Ebenezer Cobb knew it very well. So drink a loving cup to Ebenezer, Ebenezer, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Ebenezer Cobb, Ebenezer Cobb. Through the streets of London, Ebenezer came, heard the hungry cries for bread, he was a soul in pain. When the nobles in their coaches passed, he charged with wild eyes, and gnashed his teeth in anger, and roared up to the skies. Howl, ye rich, ye nobles, you will reap soon what you sow, for the day of doom is coming that will lay the mighty low, and your property will canker, and your houses will decay, and the rust of all your silver will burn your flesh away. So drink a loving cup to Abiza, Abiza, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Abiza cup, Abiza cup. Community in all things, Abiza said. The naked shall have clothing, the hungry shall have bread. The great man jails the cut purse, the rich man starves the poor. Without property, said Abiza, theft would be no more. So drink a loving cup to Abiza, Abiza, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Abiza cup, Abiza cup. Accused by church and parliament, attacked on every side. They banned his books and burned them, and he was seized and tried. The magistrates condemned him for vile blasphemy. He pelted them with nutshells, crying, will you my judges be? To Newgate jail they took him, the ranter's dream was dead. He had no taste for martyrdom, I will recant, he said. I banish sin, but I have heard it cannot be denied that these are sins, greed, tyranny, hypocrisy and pride. So drink a loving cup to Abiza, Abiza, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Abiza cup, Abiza cup. Abiza cup did away with sin. My body is my church, he said, God's dwelling is within. History disowned him, his ghost they cannot kill. Hawks the rich and righteous, drunk and dancing still. So drink a loving cup to Abiza, Abiza, he's a drinking, dancing, roaring ranter. Abiza cup, Abiza cup.
In Longo Mine, which is a network of radical farmers throughout Europe, very much in the spirit of the diggers. So, Joël, tell us what you're doing.
Sorry, but I'm going to have to read quite a bit because I can't manage to speak English, but making a speech.
Can you speak up?
I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read a bit because I had to prepare the thing and I don't trust my English that well. So, anyway. Well, as he said, I mean, for me, the story started over 25 years ago in Twickenham, where there was a whole street that we began squatting at the time. And, well, I don't know, perhaps some of you have heard about it, but anyway, when I went back to France, I looked for something similar, and it wasn't very easy because in France and in the rest of the European world, there had been something in '68 which had been sort of raised a lot of hopes in young people's head, and after that, of course, there was a lot of disappointment because, well, basically we got beaten up. And anyway, at this time, but I didn't know the people at the time, there was two movements of young apprentices in Switzerland and Austria.